In the heart of a dense, misty forest, where towering pines whispered secrets to the wind, a lone bear stood at the edge of a clearing. He was a magnificent creature once strong and proud, but now a shadow of his former self. His fur, once thick and glossy, had dulled over time, and his deep amber eyes carried a quiet sorrow. 4 or 6 long years he had waited in the same place, staring toward the horizon, as if expecting something or someone to return. The story of this bear was unlike any other. He was not lost, nor was he searching for food or shelter. Instead, he remained, in this very spot, bound by an invisible thread of hope and longing. The place where he waited held memories of warmth, of companionship, of a family that had once been his whole world, but they were gone now, taken away by fate in a cruel twist of events, leaving him behind in a world that felt far too empty. At first, the locals who lived near the forest noticed the bear's presence and thought he might move on. Days passed, then weeks, and yet he remained. Hunters and hikers alike began to recognize him, his unwavering patience stirring something deep within them. They called him the Waiting Bear, a name that carried both admiration and sadness through scorching summers and harsh, unforgiving winters. He endured it all. His body grew leaner, his movements slower, but his heart never wavered. Some believed he had given up, that he was merely existing rather than living. Others whispered that perhaps he was holding on to a memory too precious to let go. Whatever the reason, the bear stayed, his quiet vigil turning him into a legend among those who knew his tale. And then one day, when it seemed all hope had faded, something extraordinary happened, something no one could have predicted, a miracle that would change everything. The morning was crisp, the sky painted in soft hues of pink and orange, as the sun slowly stretched its light over the vast forest. Deep within the trees, a wildlife conservationist named Daniel trudged through the underbrush, his boots crunching against frost-kissed leaves. He had spent years studying the region's wildlife, tracking the movements of various animals. But there was one creature that had captured his heart more than any other. The Waiting Bear. Daniel had first heard whispers of the bear's story from the locals, tales of a lonely giant who refused to leave the place where his family was last seen. Skeptical at first, he had ventured out to see for himself, and what he found had shaken him to his core. The bear was indeed real, standing motionless by the same riverbank, staring into the distance as if frozen in time. He wasn't just a wild animal, he was a living symbol of loss, patience, and devotion. Over the years, Daniel visited whenever he could, watching over the bear from a safe distance. He left food nearby when the harsh winters made hunting difficult. He spoke to him in gentle tones, though he never expected the bear to understand, and yet there was something in a way the bear lifted his head at the sound of Daniel's voice, something that told him he wasn't just another passing stranger. But this morning was different. The moment Daniel stepped into the clearing, he felt it in his bones. The bear was lying on his side, his great body rising and falling in shallow labor breaths. His once powerful limbs trembled with weakness, his fur matted with dirt, and ice. Panic surged through Daniel. He rushed forward, heart pounding. "Hey, big guy," he murmured, crouching a few feet. "Way, I'm here." The bear's eyes flickered open, dull and weary. Daniel immediately radioed for help. "I have a severely malnourished bear here. He's not going to make it much longer without intervention." His voice wavered slightly, but he forced himself to stay calm. Help was coming, but time was slipping away without hesitation. He pulled a protein bar from his pack, unwrapped it, and extended it toward the bear. It was a small offering, but it was something to his relief. Their bear sniffed the air and weakly licked the food from Daniel's hand. It wasn't much, but it was a sign that the fire inside him hadn't completely gone out. Minutes stretched into eternity as Daniel sat with him, whispering reassurances, promising that help was on the way. Then at last, the rumble of an approaching vehicle broke the silence. A rescue team arrived, a group of experienced wildlife specialists carrying tranquilizers and transport equipment. They worked quickly, knowing the bear wouldn't survive in another brutal winter alone as the tranquilizer took effect. Daniel knelt beside the massive creature, placing a reassuring hand on his fur. "You've waited long enough," he whispered. "It's time to start a new chapter for the first time in 6 years." The waiting bear was no longer waiting. He was being saved. The bear's new home was a vast wildlife sanctuary, a place where animals who could no longer survive in the wild were given a second chance. The dense woods and open meadows stretched for miles, offering a peaceful contrast to the harsh isolation he had endured for so many years. But despite the safety and care surrounding him, he remained distant, his gaze still searching for something that no longer existed. Daniel visited him daily, speaking in soft tones, offering food, and watching over him with quiet patience. The bear, whom his sanctuary staff had named Cody, accepted the care, but something inside him remained locked away. He would eat. He would rest, but the spark of life was missing. Then something unexpected happened. One late afternoon, as Cody lay near the edge of his enclosure, staring at the swaying treetops, a small creature trotted toward him. It was a dog, scruffy, energetic, and completely unafraid. The sanctuary had several rescue dogs who roamed freely, but this one, a golden-furred mutt named Charlie, had never shown much interest in the larger animals that day. However, something drew him to the massive bear. Cody's ears twitched at the approaching sound of light paw steps. He turned his heavy head, his deep amber eyes locking onto the curious dog standing a few feet away. Charlie, tail wagging, tilted his head as if considering his next move for a moment. Neither moved. Then, in a bold act of defiance against common sense, Charlie bounded forward and playfully barked. Daniel, watching from a distance, tensed. He had no idea how Cody would react. After all, he had spent years in solitude, mourning his lost family. Would he see the dog as a threat? Would he ignore him? To his amazement, Cody simply huffed and lowered his massive head back down. Charlie, however, was undeterred. He trotted closer, sniffed the bear's massive paw, and then, in an almost comical display of confidence, popped himself down beside Cody as if they had always been friends. The bear exhaled slowly, as if sighing in resignation. Over the next few days, something extraordinary began to happen. Wherever Cody went, Charlie followed. If the bear rested in the shade, Charlie curled up beside him. If Cody wandered to the far end of his enclosure, Charlie trotted alongside his short leg, struggling to keep pace, but never giving up. At first, Cody tolerated the presence. He didn't react much, but he also didn't push Charlie away. Then one evening, Daniel witnessed something he never thought he'd see. Charlie Ever, the troublemaker, had found a small stick, and with great enthusiasm nudged it toward Cody's giant paws. The bear blinked slowly. Unbothered, Charlie tried again, pawing at the stick and nudging it closer with his nose. This time, Cody lifted his paw ever so slightly, tapping the stick in return. It was small, barely anything at all, but it was something day by day. Cody softened when Charlie wagged his tail and yipped happily. The bear would watch with quiet amusement when the dog lay beside him. He no longer just tolerated it. He accepted it. And then came a moment that melted Daniel's heart completely. One particularly cold morning, Cody sat at the base of an old oak tree, his breath forming small clouds in the crisp air. Charlie, shivering slightly, approached him, his eyes full of trust. Without hesitation, the massive bear shifted ever so slightly, allowing the small dog to press against his thick fur. It was the first real sign of warmth Cody had shown to another soul in years. Daniel exhaled, a slow smile spread across his face. The waiting bear, the one who had endured years of solitude and sorrow, had finally found something worth staying for. A friend. Days turned into weeks, and what had begun as an unexpected companionship blossomed into something truly special. Cody, once a solitary soul burdened by years of loss, was now learning something he had long forgotten joy, and the source of that joy came in the form of a scruffy golden F-dog who refused to leave his side one morning. Daniel arrived at the sanctuary just in time to witness his sight. He never thought possible, the mighty bear. Once slow and lethargic, was moving with a lightness that seemed almost playful. Charlie dashed through the grass, tail wagging, barking excitedly as he darted around Cody's massive paws. The bear watched him with an amused expression, his deep amber eyes soft with something new affection. Then, in an almost unbelievable display of trust, Cody lifted one of his gigantic paws and gently swiped at Charlie, not with the force of a wild animal, but with the restraint of a friend engaging in play. Charlie yelped in excitement and lunged forward, tagging the bear's leg with his tiny paw before sprinting away, initiating a game of chase at first. Cody